You would notice my mom. You would notice my mom, Susan. Susan was a very vibrant, energetic, light of a person. People noticed her when she walked into a room. She had a bright smile. She was very friendly. In Sonoma County, she was a well-known figure. She was a columnist and a reporter for one of the big newspapers in Sonoma County. And so she was a public figure in a lot of ways. And people loved her. And she was very lovable. And like I said, a bright person, not in the blinding spotlight, look at me type of character, but just a warm, people gravitated to her. And so in a lot of ways, because of that, it was quite shocking, not only for me and our family, but for the community that she died in the way she did.
Everybody, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. I have someone here today who their neighbors love to do tree trimming, which is great. Well, maybe you might hear some of that, which will be fun. It's Samantha Rose is here on the podcast. We're going to be talking about her book. We're going to be talking about her journey as an author. And she's got a book that you need to read and you need to share. And I'm excited to have Samantha on the podcast. Samantha, welcome to Living the Next Chapter. Glad to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Tell everybody, Samantha, where you are in this big world of ours.
I am in Petaluma, California, which is a cute little town in Sonoma County, just north of San Francisco.
Wow. Okay. So born and raised or transplanted?
I grew up in Sonoma County and spent some of my professional life in the Bay Area, and then spent about 8 years in Austin, Texas, and then moved back to Sonoma County, where most of my family lives.
Nice. Amazing. Okay. Well, see, that's what I love about podcasting is I get to travel the world talking to my guests. I have never been to your part of the world and I need to go. So I have this really long list of places I need to see after talking to over 500 authors. I got a long list. There's a lot of great places out there. So
I bet. Yeah. Well, I haven't been to your neck of the woods either.
There we go. So we have this big hill with lots of water called Niagara Falls. It's apparently really popular. So you got to come see that someday. It's pretty impressive.
Sounds good.
I love it. Okay, so let's start off with your journey, Samantha. How did all this start for you? Your book just launched recently. Congratulations.
Thank you.
For our authors that are listening, they're so curious about where you're at in your journey as an author because they're just starting. Like they started 2 days ago. They've got 5 words on a piece of paper and they're like, what am I doing? Like, I don't even know how I'm going to get to your spot where you're published. Any tips that you have for a fellow author starting out? Like, what would you have liked to hear way back before you started writing this book? What would have been helpful for you?
I think you just have to start. I tell this to my son. He's in the 7th grade and who's actually fretting about a paper he has to write this week. And there's really no way around it. You just have to start getting words on a page and allow yourself to have messy first drafts and give yourself the grace to return and edit. And can you hear the tree?
No.
Oh,
No, we're good.
They started again. Shoot. Well, if you can't hear it, it's okay.
No, that's fine. We're good.
I'll keep going. I mean, it sounds really simple and probably your listeners have heard that before, but I do think that is the best advice to just start and to start small, to write, to start small and to also commit to writing. I do some coaching, and one of the things I tell my coaching clients is commit to 30 minutes or an hour or a 5-block hour a week. Put it in your schedule. Otherwise, it doesn't happen. And I know this as a writer who writes every single day. If I don't make it a priority, it's very easy to back burner it. There's a million other things that you could be doing, or maybe you think you should be doing. So commit to writing. Put it in your calendar.
So when you have some downtime and you have a chance to pull out a great book and grab a coffee or tea and sit down and read for a little while, what kind of stuff do you like to read?
Oh, well, it's funny because I write nonfiction. I'm a ghostwriter primarily. I am the book that just came out, Giving Up the Ghosts, is written under my name. So I'm the author of that book, but I've spent the last almost 17 years ghostwriting, and I ghostwrite mostly nonfiction, but I love to read fiction. I've
Hmm.
never written fiction, but I love to read fiction. I mostly read at the end of the day, right as I'm getting into bed. And so I like something that transports me to another time or another part of the world or introduces me to people I would never meet otherwise. So I'm a big fiction reader and I like
Hmm.
to read all kinds of stuff. I take recommendations from people, um, and I'm just always being introduced to new cool things. Right now, I'm
Amazing.
reading Matt Haig.
Okay.
I discovered him a year or so ago, and now I've read everything of his. I love him. He writes fiction and nonfiction.
So somebody I should have on the podcast then maybe, right?
You could get him. He's a
Big.
big deal.
Well, you're a
He's
big
a
deal and
big.
I got you. So there we go. Come on. I love it. Okay. So I'm really curious about the ghostwriting side. My friend's a ghostwriter here in Canada. And I remember asking him, like, isn't it to feel weird to walk into a store and see a book that you actually wrote and it's got someone else's name on it? Like, don't you feel like you're losing out in that transaction a little bit? And he said, Dave, I get to give voice to people and help them write their book when they couldn't, either because they're too busy or they just the one person he wrote for, an amazing, talented speaker, travels the world, highly renowned speaker, business person, but he would write at like a grade 8, grade 9 level. He just couldn't put pen to paper, but he wanted a book and he was kind of stopped because of that. And my friend was able to come in, write in his voice, spend time with him, capture his essence, and put a book out for him. And he's like, that's the most rewarding thing ever, to give words and life to somebody's dream that they can't fulfill. He said, that's why I do it. And I don't care if my name's on the book. And I'm like, wow. So I'm very curious about ghostwriters. So I know we can't talk about specifics, but from your perspective, like, why ghostwriting? Why is that so important to you?
I feel similarly to your friend. I think
Okay.
it's a privilege to tell someone else's story. These people put a lot of trust in me to tell their story. I write primarily in first person narrative.
Wow.
So I'm writing as them and I it's a privilege to that they give me permission to do that. And it becomes an intimate relationship often. I usually talk to my clients on the phone once or twice a week. We usually work together for 6 months up to a year or sometimes longer. So you develop a relationship with these people and you have to know a lot about them to write as them and to write about the intimate stories of their life or whatever message they want to share. And they do come to me as your friend talks about it. There's someone that has a great story or a great message, but they're not necessarily writers. A lot of them run really successful companies.
Yeah.
They're amazing speakers, perhaps, a variety of reasons, or they don't have time to write. Writing a book takes a lot of time. And so it's a really cool gig. I've met a lot of interesting people and learned a lot about different facets of life and different industries that I probably would not have met them otherwise.
Okay. Yeah. It's kind of like getting comfortable in someone else's shoes. Right? You're walking their path for them and with them. And I just love the result. And I love the unselfish nature of ghostwriting in that it's not all about you as the writer, but there's a sense of pride as well that you can say, I had a hand in that. And it's given that person success and given them a voice or opportunity because of a book that they couldn't have got there on their own. So I love that you guys do that as ghostwriters. I think it's amazing, and I don't hear a lot of people talking about ghostwriters as much because you're so mysterious, you ghostwriters. So hard to bring you out of the bushes and say, "Oh, there's a ghostwriter. I found one." But it's kind of I just love how you do what you do to help people. I just think it's great.
There's a lot of us. I did it for many years before realizing that there were so many of us out there. Writing is such a solitary profession anyway, and ghostwriting tends to be even more shrouded, as you say, in mystery and being invisible. You're
Right.
writing as somebody else. But there are a lot of us out there writing books for other people, and it is very cool to be able to give voice to others. And I think there's something about there's a permission that, at least I'll speak for myself. There's a permission I give myself as a ghostwriter to go a little deeper because it isn't my story. I can be a little more, I can be more objective than my clients a lot of times, and I can encourage them to go deeper, to become a little more vulnerable, or to tell a piece of the story that they may have forgotten about or they think is insignificant, and really tease out parts of their life and their message that they wouldn't have written if they were doing it for themselves.
Right. A totally different point of view. Kind of say, hey, I'd like to dig deep on this part of your story, and they're like, "Oh, I thought that was insignificant." You're like, "No, that's really important. I want to like to develop that more." And I think they're going to get a really rich view of themselves from someone else's point of view. I like that. Great. So, okay, so you go from ghostwriting, and then what point did you say, okay, well, I want to write for myself and do this book and get my story out, my words under my name? What was the thing that kind of made you say, I'm going to shift gears and focus in on my own story?
I'd been ghostwriting for 17 years, I think 16, 17 years. And in the spring of 2020, right before lockdown, COVID lockdown, my mother took her life. And so that was a real reckoning. I was ghostwriting at another project at that point, but given this big event in my personal life, I started taking notes. I started journaling about it with a grief counselor that I started working with almost pretty immediately. And he was the one to say, you really should write about this. And so I had it in the back of my mind that maybe I would want to write about it at some point. And I had been feeling for probably the few years leading up to that I was getting a little bit itchy with ghostwriting and that I wanted to tell my own story, but I wasn't sure what story to tell. And all of a sudden I had a big story to tell if I was going to be brave enough to tell it.
So when you sit down to write this, are you writing it for yourself to kind of process and to kind of get your words out and see them on paper? Or are you also then at the same time writing to an audience and you're thinking about how you can take your story and help somebody else? Like, how do you approach that?
Initially, I started writing for myself. I started writing as a way to process all the complicated feelings I was having around grief and the suddenness and shock around her death. Because I'm a writer, it's a natural way for me to process how I'm thinking. And so I really started just writing for me. And then at some point, as readers will find out in the story, it takes a bit of a turn where I start having a dialogue with my mom and feeling that she still had some things to say. And so I started writing for her as well. And then at some point I thought, am I actually writing a book? Am I going to do this? And I was encouraged again by my grief counselor to keep going. At one point, I said, "It feels if I'm going to do this, I don't know. It feels really indulgent. Who is going to want to read this? Why am I doing this?" And he said, "You're doing this because it's helping you heal. And at this point, it's about more than you. If you can help one person, keep going." And so I did.
So in the process of writing, that's an intimate thing where you're coming face to face with some of your feelings and things that you're dealing with in the moment. Did you feel like at times your mother was with you, kind of walking you through, holding your hand as you write this?
I did. I don't want to give too much away, but
Yes, please.
part two of the book becomes a dialogue between my deceased mother and myself. And I started having dreams about her, really, really vivid dreams. And I would write those down. And then I started developing them into full back and forth dialogue between the two of us based on those dreams that felt real. They felt authentic to me.
Yeah.
And I thought, let's just do this. These are conversations that we need to have. These are conversations that are unfinished. And so let's finish them. And so that becomes the basis of part two of the book. And whether or not it really happened or didn't, I'll leave up to the reader to decide for themselves. But it did feel real for me. And it really helped me process again the feelings of loss and grief and suicide as a complicated death, and it leaves so many unanswered questions, and
Right.
the process of writing about it and her and I discussing it together was very helpful.
To tell us about your mom. Like if we were to meet her at the local market on a busy Saturday morning and everybody's crowded and bustling and there's a lot of noises and stuff, and here she comes down the aisle. Tell us about her.
You would notice
who
my
is she?
mom. You would
Yeah.
notice my mom, Susan. Susan was a very vibrant, energetic, light of a person. People noticed her when she walked into a room. She had a bright smile. She was very friendly. In Sonoma County, she was a well-known figure. She was a columnist and a reporter for one of the big newspapers in Sonoma County. And so she was a public figure in a lot of ways. And people loved her. And she was very lovable. And like I said, a bright person, not in the blinding spotlight, look at me type of character, but just a warm, people gravitated to her. And so in a lot of ways, because of that, it was quite shocking, not only for me and our family, but for the community that she died in the way she did.
Mm-hmm. And talk a little bit about your relationship with your mother too. Like I'm always trying to picture the dynamics between a child and a parent, especially as adults. And you just trying to you look at how people interact with each other. I have three grown children, all in their mid late 20s, and I don't see them as often anymore. They're out of the house doing life, right? So over time, you just you don't see your parents as humans. You kind of see them as your parent. But can you talk a little bit about your dynamic with your mom? Like what was the relationship like?
We were really close. We were always close growing up, and then as I became an adult, we became friends. We were adult friends. We both worked in the world of words, so we were colleagues in a way because we were writers, and we're different but similar enough. I mean, we were really close, and I acknowledge that not everyone has a relationship like I did with their mother, and I feel very lucky, really lucky. And still, there are things about her, especially in the last year before she died, that I didn't know. And part of what I write about is the anger, really, initially, that someone I thought that I knew so well and who we shared so much together, that she had withheld something so big.
I always try to think on the behalf of somebody who's now gone, and just like there's a wrestling that happens. There's a lot of feelings, a lot of emotions around all of this. There's a lot of things that they're working through on their end that we're completely oblivious to. And I was just kind of just curious, like what people need in life, and maybe how your book is going to help us understand that better through the lens of reading your book. It's just how disconnected we are, I guess, in our day to day. I go back to the market and we're passing each other and we're in each other's way, but we're not stopping to hear anybody's story or connect on a really deeper level. And I just think that we could all be a little bit more aware of the people in our life, because there's a reason they're there. And I just would love to be able to be that person for people, that when they do need someone, to whatever degree, that there's someone there for them. And I'm just curious how your book is going to help us to better approach our families, the dynamics of our family. Like, what is the overarching kind of idea behind the book for a reader? Is it to help us to be better with our relatives and our family? And is that kind of the idea? Like, can you expand on that a little bit?
I think you're right, everything you're saying. We definitely need more of that. We need to show up for people, let the people in our lives know that we're there, engage with people more. I could do more of that every day. I challenge myself to do more of that. I think the big message of my book is to tell the truth, even when it's hard, even when it's scary to yourself, even when you think it's going to scare other people, to try and tell the truth and to ask for help if you need it. And that help in whatever form, for whatever the thing. I think that my mother withheld how much pain she was in and didn't ask for help in a way that could have perhaps changed the ending, perhaps. I think women, a lot of times, and specifically her generation, there's a stigma around appearing weak or needy or asking for help, that it's not strong. I think we need to change that. I think women need to reframe what it means to be strong. And being strong, I think, is being vulnerable. And it's hard and it's scary and it feels really awkward. And there's a lot of reasons to not share. But ultimately, I think it becomes our own trap.
Yeah. As the book is now out live for us to enjoy, and we'll have links obviously in the show notes to go grab a copy and to buy a copy for someone else as well. Some feedback. What have you been hearing from readers about the book that maybe you didn't anticipate to a certain degree, or something you just like you heard back and you're like, wow, like it's connecting, it's actually working? What kind of feedback are you getting?
I am getting really good feedback so far, which is wonderful. I love good feedback. I mean, it's a heavy topic, but there is some lightness in it. I tell people when they start it, often I've been hearing from friends will text me and say, I started it and wow, I'm really in there with you. And this is heavy. And I'll say, yeah, but stick with it. It gets lighter, I promise. And there's some surprises in there in terms of the second part that I spoke about, the reconnection. But there's a through line of me and my son. In this book, he was 8 at the time. And again, this was during the early days of the pandemic where we were really side by side for a good year anyway. And there's some sweetness in there and there's some humor. I mean, I do rely on my sense of humor and sort of a darker sense of humor, perhaps at times to lighten life when it's hard. I think, well, anyway, for myself, I need that. But back to what you're asking, I've gotten good. The feedback has been interesting. It seems to be resonating. And what's so cool about a book, right, is that you bring your own experience to a story, even if this is very much my story. It's very raw, and I didn't hold back much, and it's a very intimate look into my life, and yet I've heard from people who say, "Oh, this made me think about my relationship with my dad," or this made me reflect on my relationship with my mother that's estranged, that's not intimate." Or it's helped me think about how to talk to my kids who are in middle school. So I love to hear how things land and how my story is can be helpful to someone else.
So you talked earlier about ghostwriting, and you're writing on behalf of someone else and using your words to help them share their words. Does that skill and talent and ability of doing that for like 17 years, does that help you write for your mother's point of view in this book? Because you're actually writing her words, and she's not here to do those words. So
Right.
does that give you that ability to write on her behalf as well?
Well, the process I used was very similar to how I ghostwrite. So
Okay.
how I ghostwrite is there's no formal training that I've undertaken. It's just really a process of listening to people and being empathetic and really getting someone else's words in your head. I hear my client's voice as my own, and I work to translate their voice onto the page. And it is kind of a magical thing that happens. And so when I started having these dreams about my mom and writing them onto the page, I started to ask questions about her death or things leading up that I wanted to know. And I listened for her. I listened for her voice. I mean, I can recall her voice in a snap over a lifetime of hearing her voice. But I started to hear her in the present. And as I would hear her side of the conversation, I would write it.
Do you think these dreams that you're talking about would have happened had you not written this book?
Well, the dreams came first.
Okay. All right.
So I wasn't writing yet.
Okay.
I wasn't formally writing yet.
Okay.
I was taking notes when I would get on these calls with my grief counselor. Every Wednesday we'd have a call, and I would handwrite things that came up. But I didn't formally sit down to write a book until much later after the dreams. I had little pieces and parts.
Interesting. Okay. Because as a reader, I think that's something I really want to build as a bridge between a reader and with you, so that when they get your book for the first time, they open it, they kind of have some sort of idea where we're going in the story. And that's what I love about podcasting is I can have your book in my hand and be hearing this conversation and going, wow. So I like to ask this from time to time to my guests, Samantha, like, I have a copy of your book. It just arrived on my doorstep. I'm ready to sit down and read for the first time. You've already given us so much about the book, but your love letter, like, what is it to me as a reader? that you want me to know before I read my first word from Giving Up the Ghost? Like, what do you want me to know about this book?
Open your mind and open your heart and take it slow. And I don't know what.
Hmm.
I don't like to know a whole lot about a book before I dive in.
Oh, I like that.
That's
Yeah.
the surprise and the discovery that I love about reading. So I'll always read the back of books and to get a little sneak peek and maybe the inside flap. But otherwise, I want to be surprised and I don't want to have a whole lot. I don't want to know a whole lot going in. I guess I would come back to what I said earlier is it's heavy and it's important. And if you're willing to dive in there with me, I promise I hold your hand until the end.
What do you think your mother would say about the book? She had a chance to read it herself.
I think she's pretty excited about it. I do. I think she would. When I first started writing it, I thought, oh, she would say, what are you doing? No, don't do this. People are not going to like this. She was a bit of a people pleaser. I think I had that internal conversation in the beginning was thinking she would say, oh, people aren't going to like this, Sam.
Mm.
And as I continued to, I decided to write anyway. I've gotten to believing that she would think this was really cool, that she gets to have a voice again. I have heard from people who say that you have introduced your mother to me and you've sort of immortalized her, and how cool that you've been able to do that. So I think it's definitely it's a tribute to her.
I like it. It's amazing. So, Samantha, as far as your website and everything, I'd like to kind of point people there. And I do have a question here at the end I want to wrap up with, but take us through your website. I'm on it while we're chatting. I'm seeing links to the book. I'm seeing your bio and your coaching you talked about earlier. But kind of tell us a little bit about when we go to yellowskymedia.com, like what are we going to see here as we come for the first time to your website?
You're going to see a bunch of different books that I've written over the last decade or so, with a whole range of different kind of folks. From I've worked with psychic mediums to reality stars to exotic pet veterinarians. There's kind of the gamut, which has been fun, which has made ghostwriting a really great career. And you'll see some of the different kind of services I offer, like the coaching. I write book proposals for folks. I do full-length titles. You might see a little bit about my background and about my recent book.
There you go. Everything's there. We'll have links to that in the show notes. So my podcast is called Living the Next Chapter, and I like to ask this question too. I picked that name for a reason because I think we're all living our next chapter, no matter whether we're an author or not. We're all at different stages of our life, learning new things at new stages. So for you, the book is out. Congratulations. It's amazing. How are you living your next chapter? Like, what's down the road for you? What are you excited about?
I'm excited about this book being out in the world because it's lived inside my head and my body for the last 5 years. The 5-year anniversary mark of her passing is tomorrow, February 25th.
What?
So this feels very full circle. I'm excited to you'll have to fix that part. I'm excited to have conversations and inspire conversations. I hope people want to dialogue about this. And I'm excited to be visible. I've been in the shadows for quite some time as a ghostwriter. And this book really forced me to come out of the shadows, not just by writing a book under my own name, but just realizing in the big and small ways that I'd been quiet or dimming myself or not stepping forward. I think a lot of people do that at different times in their life. And it was a really good check for me. And so I'm ready to be out in the world.
A first-time author with 17 years of experience. Right?
Yeah. I've kind of done it backwards, I guess.
Is there more writing for yourself coming up in the future, Sam?
I think so. I don't know. I don't know what's next.
Okay.
But yes, of course.
It's in you, right? You have.
What else would I do?
Right. Yeah. I love it. Okay, Sam, this is great. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast and to honor your mother. And I didn't realize the timing of our interview today and everything. So my thoughts with you this weekend as well. But again, thank you for writing this. Thank you for sharing this. I think it's going to open conversation. It's going to give people a different point of view as well. Maybe there's a parent reading this, and then there's the child, this adult children reading this. There's different ways that people can interact with this book, and it can be very helpful to maybe having the conversations, to reach out for help when you don't feel like you have somebody in your corner, and spark the conversation. That might be the one thing. And that's the one thing I love about authors is you put a book out in the world and you sell a bunch of copies and it's a success. But what if somebody grabs your book, Samantha, and because of your book, they take a different path in life because there's something there that fed them and answered some questions that were nagging for them as a reader. And your words, your story through your mother helped give them a new frame of reference. Like what kind of, that's success right there, that you could use your words to help somebody in the process as well while telling your mother's story. I think that's a beautiful thing. So thank you for writing this and thank you for sharing it with the world.
Thank you for having me.
Excellent. Everything will be in the show notes for Samantha, her website, everything you'll see there. Go through. You've got a lot of books to check out. You've got a lot of things that you can do to support another amazing author. And my request for everyone listening is when you buy the book, when you buy Giving Up the Ghost, that you leave an amazing review. Because I know that Samantha would love to hear your thoughts, to hear how it resonated with you as a reader. I think it's fuel for authors to hear your feedback. Go beyond great book, great author. Let's get some detail in there so that Samantha can see why this book resonated so well with you. I think it also helps other people to fall in love with Samantha as an author as well. So that's your responsibility as a reader. Leave a detailed, great review for our authors. I think it means so much. Samantha, thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much.
Thanks again for being here, for listening to the show. Truly appreciate you. LivingTheNextChapter.com, as we always mention, is where you can find everything to do with the show. And one thing that we're going to be doing coming up really, really, really soon is we're going to be creating a Living the Next Chapter online magazine. Oh. If you want to see what it kind of looks like in a different format, you can go to CanadianPodcaster.com and you'll see I've made a newsletter online magazine for podcasters in Canada. I know you're not probably in Canada, but you could look at it. But we're creating something similar. We're going to group together our authors. We have 500 episodes. How are you going to find your next favorite author? We're going to group them together in like genres of writing, children's books, historical fiction. We're going to make these little online magazines and they'll be available to you for free. So head over to livingthenextchapter.com, watch, because they'll be showing up there very, very soon. And I can't wait for you to check them out. Okay? Go check out livingthenextchapter.com and look for our new online magazine coming soon to the internet near you. Thank you for listening. Take care.